Welcome to The Other Side, Mississippi Today's political podcast. I'm your host, Adam Ganishow. The Other Side lets you hear directly from the most connected players and observers across the spectrum of politics in Mississippi. From breaking news to political strategy to interviews with candidates and elected officials, we'll bring you facts, perspectives, and context that helps you cut through the noise and understand all sides of the story.
I'm Bobby Harrison, a political reporter for Mississippi Today, and I'm kind of flying solo today, but don't worry, y'all aren't going to have to listen to me for 30 minutes. We do have a guest, and we're very fortunate to have former Mississippi Supreme Court Chief Justice William Waller, Jr. Justice Waller, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Bobby. Great to be on the air with you.
Yeah, I know a lot of people when they said I was flying solo, thought, well, we don't want to listen to him to talk for 30 minutes. but don't worry, we're gonna be listening to you.
Well, they may rather listen to you than me, though.
No, I'm sure that's not right. Of course, Bill Waller you were elected to the Supreme Court in '99 or '98, and served. And you became Chief Justice, I believe. I think these numbers are right. I think around 2013. No, 2009 you became Chief Justice, I think.
Yeah, 2009. Right.
And, of course, you retired in 2019, early in 2019, and retired just in time to run for governor. Of course, some people, I think it's not. I think it's a fact. You waited, I think you would admit this, waited a little too late to get in a statewide race like that. But you still had a competitive race, forced to run off in the Republican primary. And, you didn't win, but it was, considering how late you got in the race, ran a tough race. I don't know, you don't have to comment on that, but if you want to, you can.
Yeah, no, I there's no doubt about it. You can't do that in 6 months. Most people can't. William Winter did. He got in late.
Yeah, well, it was kind of different. Of course, he had a lot of name ID. He had run several statewide races by then, and it's kind of a different money ball game now than when Governor Winter was elected.
Oh yeah. No, I was just thrilled with the vote I got in, and I just the position Chief Justice and what we had going on. There wasn't in earlier times that I felt like I could retire and leave a smooth transition. So that was all I could do. But we got within 26,000 votes of the Republican nomination in the runoff, and so I was just thrilled with the support, and I did learn something. Being Chief Justice is not a big deal to the voters because I didn't have that name recognition of that position didn't go too far. So the third branch or the judicial branch of government, and it shouldn't be something that's in the news every day. We should be quietly doing our work, turning it out in a timely, efficient, and transparent way, and that's the way it should be. But you're right. I definitely had to fight the name identification, particularly as you went toward the borders, the coast, and DeSoto County, and even in my district, Lauderdale and Warren County. The further away you got from Jackson, the more difficult it was because of that, the name identification and the recognition of issues coming out of Jackson, and the lack of a viable state newspaper or really news across the state for people to even know what's going on. So, yeah, there's a lot of factors, but ultimately, I just didn't get enough votes.
Well, I want to go back to talk about as you referred to, the third branch of government. But before we do that, I just want to catch up. What are you doing now, Justice Waller?
We started transitioning up to Oxford, and when the pandemic hit, our daughter works, and she married a young man in Oxford and has a couple of kids. She's working out of home, and so we had to kind of step in with the child care and with her two young children, and we kind of stayed up here and continued to help her. And I'm teaching. I teach a class at Ole Miss Law School. I teach a class at MC Law School, and then between that, I'm involved. I'm asked everyone, to speak or be involved in some more seminar or consulting. But between those and trying to help out a little bit at the church, we're very busy, splitting the time between Jackson and Oxford, and it's been good, and trying to give back. That's what I want to do, and I didn't want to go back into law practice. Really didn't want to go back into special judge. I wanted to try to do some things to give back and help. Maybe with this next group of lawyers that we got, maybe we can do some things with them to think about the big picture and social need for lawyers and how they can impact society other than making money. So that's what I'm trying to do. Probably not doing it very well, but it's keeping me busy.
Well, I know you. I'm sure you're doing it just fine. Just like you made your mark on the Supreme Court with some of the changes you made there, and I'm sure you're doing the same thing in the classroom, if you will. But let me just get this straight. You're teaching in class at both the University of Mississippi Law School and Mississippi College Law School. So you're on the road some every week.
I am now. It's not I have a good time schedule. I'm at MC in the fall and Ole Miss in the spring.
Oh, okay.
I'm not doing them at the same time. I'd love to do them at the same time, but the schedules just don't permit. But it's I've got great faith in the students that are in law school and what their interests are, and we really have a great need in the community for lawyers, or in the state for lawyers to go back into rural areas. There's a huge need. Our lawyers that are aging out in places like Calhoun County and Knoxville County and in rural areas, and I'm trying to encourage these young people to take a stake there and for life. Is you just have to have a good legal base in every community, just like you have to have a good school, a good hospital. You got to have good lawyers there because that's important for business reasons, for just for people having good legal advice, and just for the day-to-day challenges that come up in life, domestic situations or estates, or bettering yourself with buying a home or whatever. So I'm trying to encourage that, but that's a big issue now, and I'm hoping, and I think our law schools are focusing on the needs we have homegrown, and not necessarily sending people throughout the country as missionaries, which that's needed too. But we do have a big need in the state.
I had not even thought about that. But in general, law school enrollment is I always was under the impression it was increasing, but I guess a lot of the young folks want to be in a urban area. Is that correct, or is
that's correct? That's correct. I think, and my numbers may be wrong, but I think MC is around 135, 140 in the enrollment they just had, and I think Ole Miss is around 160. And I'm probably off on that, but I had this may interest you. I had a Bible study 2 years ago at Ole Miss, and we had about 12 students, really good students. And so I looked at the bar exam. I looked at the results, and I was shocked to find that most of them, or a lot of them, had taken the bar out of state, particularly in Tennessee. Of course, you would expect that at Ole Miss, and so I really want to try to influence, if I can, them to stay in here and to be a part of Mississippi and the next generation. So yeah, it's a big struggle because they're highly educated, they're motivated, and today people are very fluent, about where they live and what they do, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But we've got great needs back here that we need to fill.
Well, I mean, I don't want to harp on the 2019 gubernatorial election, but one of the things you did talk about during that election was, and other people have talked about too, is the brain drain in Mississippi. That it's a continuing problem, and that I guess that you've seen it up close and personal now.
Oh yeah, I definitely have, and it's real, and I think there's a lot of press about what is referred to as the low unemployment rate in Mississippi. And that's a total misnomer. I mean, there's nothing to talk about because our worker participation rate is 55%, which is the worst in the nation. That means we've got fewer people that are eligible to be in the workforce, that are in the workforce, than any other state in the nation. And so our education needs a lot of work. I mean, needs a lot of work. It's still, I was, you know, when you called me about this, I thought about, you know, well, the issues when I ran were highways, hospitals, and education, and they're still there, still the same places. But, you know, you think about, I'd like to see the education system move toward that 45% that are not in the workforce. And by that, I mean getting real vocational training down, even starting in junior high. And let's get, you know, people getting excited about people getting training the way we do football players and have, when I was campaigning, Ingalls has a signing day. They have the parents in the newspaper and the student, they're signing, coming on with Ingalls. We need that type of excitement all over the state. We need partnerships with local industry, you know, with their needs. And the community college is not just doing things the students want to take, but tied local. But this needs to go into the high schools, community colleges. That's college, and a lot of the people that graduate are not interested in college, and they're ready to go to work. But a student deserves to have a chance to have a reasonable opportunity to find a job if they're not interested in going to college, and that's really where we're failing, and that's really where the brain drain is, the source of the brain drain, and our terrible work participation rate. So we've got to rethink education, and it can't be a total college prep deal like most of it is now, because a lot of people in high school are not interested in going to college for whatever reason. They're not ready for it, or they're not interested in it. We want to do something else. So anyway, those three issues are still front and center, and I think we're still suffering for it. You know, as you mentioned, we were one of 3 states in the nation that lost population in the last census, which is just terrible, particularly in the South, which everywhere else is having a resurgence, at least in the South, than Mississippi. So, yeah, we've got we still have a lot of work to do. I'd like to see some changes with that.
Well, I mean, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you at this point in time. I wasn't planning on making this a purely political podcast, but I mean, you still have a lot of passion, it seems like, for the state. Are there any chance you may run again for governor or another office, or have you thought about that?
Bobby, I'd love to do it, but, you know, life can be complicated. I'm 72 years old. I don't want to make age the issue that it was this time. So, you know, I'm interested in it. I'm in the sidelines. I'm certainly open to look, and I want to help where I can. So I'll just say this: I'm gonna see whatever the direction is that the good Lord needs me, and I'm going to try to follow that. But, you know, there's so many things that you know, this is I'm going to hit on this, and this is kind of personal to me. My grandson likes to camp, and our state parks are in terrible condition. And I don't know how anybody could talk about a tax break when we've got so many needs that we have. And I'm not talking about the good people there that are working every day. I'm talking about the basic infrastructure. It is just horrible. And our welcome stations, how in the world are we going to have the most people that have first impression of Mississippi, those that drive into the state and stop at a welcome station? Ours are the worst in the Southeast. I mean, you go to Oklahoma, they've got a Native American themed place. You go to brand new. You go to Tennessee, they've got it's sort of a mountain, log cabin kind of thing. Big, spacious, nice places to park. You go to Louisiana, they have a nice facility, hand you a hot cup of coffee. And go to Alabama, same thing. And Mississippi's, I'm not sure. They're old. I think some of those are there when my dad was governor. But it was. I mean, there's so many things that from a leadership standpoint that we need to give focus and attention to. We're still fighting the Libya Y thing. It started in 2004. I think everybody listening to this is, why do we not want to have every child to have a chance? Why do we not want to have permanency in relationships and try to work that way instead of having, endless terms in foster care? We need, we've got federal oversight of mental health. We've got the DHS scandal seems to be just coasting. I noticed that back in DOC, that scandal back in 2014, 2015, we've got this. I would really like to see some more executive involvement in just running state government, and which doesn't seem to exist, or it seems to be just everybody's sort of happy with the way the things are and just coast along, see what turns up. But yeah, we do have a lot of needs, and and I'm hoping and praying that we can turn things around. And, there's a lot of discussion about cutting taxes, and I'm for that as much as anybody else. But when I was running, we were trying to move our gas tax up a little bit. I think it's good. Responsibility, just like raising children, they need to have responsibility. They need to make beds, and they take pride in the yard, help with the yard work. Well, helping pay for highways is part of that. And we couldn't get a tax raise there where every state around us got a tax raise to help with infrastructure. And so we're still crumbling and not taking care of what the good Lord has given us. And through that, so it's just a lot of needs. There's and a lot of needs for management and a driving leader in an executive position, and people will follow that. People will respond to that. So yeah, there's a lot of concerns. And with the tax bill, we've had two big infusions of money with the coronavirus money that we got with our part of the Biden's infrastructure bill that we had. And that money is slowly playing out, if not gone, and we're going to have sort of a reckoning with the tax cuts that haven't even been implemented. So I'm concerned about it, and I'm glad the legislature, I noticed that there's committees appointed in the House and the Senate to look for tax structure and everything, but we need to be, we've got some needs. There certainly needs to be more efficiency in government, which I think is part of that executive leadership need, but we've got to be very careful about that. Our tax rates are already very low, and they talk about no income tax in Tennessee and Florida. Well, you can't really compare us to Florida with what they have with the tourism and everything, and their gas tax is 3 or 4 times as much as ours. Tennessee, their gas tax is higher. Then they hit you with the like you buy a new car in Mississippi, it's 5%. I think in Tennessee it's much more than that. They hit you another way. So just because they don't have income tax, we just need to be careful about the tax structure, because they've got other ways of making that up. In Florida, you can hardly go to the bathroom without paying a toll on the road. So it's there's trade-offs, and but somebody has to pay. And I know in my situation, I have had to pay the state income tax on occasions, and it's certainly, I don't enjoy paying taxes, but if I feel like I'm getting my money's worth from the tax, and it's okay. It makes you feel better. So anyway, I'm kind of rambling along. What other what other issues or whatever you think we need to address?
Well, I mean, just along the lines of what you're talking about, I get emails just about every day from studies and whatnot, and I just got an email this morning I was looking at before we started this. There's a national study saying we had the third worst road system in the nation, unsafest road system in the nation. So to your point, and then another point was Senate Finance Chair. I knew we got a lot of money, but that federal infusion of cash that we've gotten over the past several years. But Josh Harkins, the Senate Finance Chair, the other day at an event said that it totaled $33 billion would it be that has come to Mississippi, additional federal money when you take into account the money that went directly to people and to individuals, and the money that went to companies, and the money went to the state and local governments and the schools. So I mean, in a small state like Mississippi, $33 billion makes a huge difference. And that, you're right, that money's going to eventually play out, and so the revenue that the state's has been receiving is not going to be there over a long period of time, perhaps. Yeah. So just to the point you were making.
So we just need to be very careful about how we look at that. I think the study committee is the right approach, but we've got some housekeeping to do too. We got to wash the car, clean the car. But there's some basic housekeeping things that have got to be done in Mississippi.
Yes, sir. Going back to changing the topic a little bit, going back to the judiciary, you mentioned that when you ran for governor in 2019, even though you had been on the Supreme Court for you've been on the Supreme Court for a number of years and been Chief Justice of the Supreme Court for over a decade, that a lot of people just didn't know you. A lot of states don't elect their judiciary. Do you think that's the right? They do it a different way. Some, the governor makes appointments confirmed by the Senate. In other states, there's a commission that makes nominations for the judiciary, and it's confirmed by the Senate. Or there's just a bunch of different ways we elect our judiciary. Is that the right path?
Bobby, I've rolled that over many ways, many times. In reality, we have an elected judiciary, but with people dying, leaving office early for whatever reasons. For instance, I left, I think 2 years earlier in my term, and there was an appointment made. So particularly in the appellate courts, almost half the positions are filled initially by appointments. Now, it's less on the trial court because you've got shorter terms and people can complete their terms and that sort of thing. But there's still a lot. There's a lot of judges that start. So in a lot of ways, we have a little bit of both. With that though, so the advantage of having the elections is if you've got someone that's really doing a bad job, you've got an opportunity to remove them. And if it's like an appointment for life or an appointment for as long as you're in good standing, and you don't have that. So I would say that there's not a perfect system, and with the opportunity to have accountability, I think everyone needs to have accountability. I think that what we have may be the best thing. I think that the sub-districts, I would like to see everyone. You certainly need sub-districts for places like stuff in the first district. There would never be anybody from Alcorn or Prentice County if they didn't have a place. But I think everybody in the district needs to be, everybody in the larger district needs to vote for whoever's in the sub-district. I think if you're presiding in the district, everyone needs to have a vote in that, and we don't have that in all places. I think that would make a better election situation. But I think on balance, I think it's worked pretty well, and right now I think that's probably what we have is what we ought to keep.
Okay, you're saying, just to be clear on you're talking about the trial court judges. They're elected from the trial court districts are divided up throughout the state. There's really not any rhyme or reason some way in the reason in how they're divided up. But you're saying in a sub district you could have take the first district up in Northeast Mississippi. You could have a judge elected from Alcorn and Prentice counties, for example. But even though he had to live in those counties, he'd be voted on district wide. Is that
Right. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
That's right.
And the reason, I mean, I called you earlier and was talking to you about something else, and at that point in time, during the conversation, we just ended up. I ended up saying, "Gee, Bill Waller would be a great podcast guest, and I'm so appreciative for you to doing this." But the reason I called you and I wanted to talk to you for just a few minutes about it was, I mean, your dad was a big character, a big figure in Mississippi politics for a number of years, and sometimes I think he, in some ways, is a little bit overlooked. I mean, he was like I was working on another story, and I didn't realize, but he did, and I don't think you realized it based on our conversation. But in the 71 general election, he got more votes than any gubernatorial candidate has gotten before or since then. I mean, before then, or even up to now, even though our population has grown. He got over 600,000 votes in 1971. No one's gotten that number of votes. And he was a unique character in that he was ahead of his time in a lot of ways in terms of race and compared to the politicians of that day. And I was interested in '64. He was a Hinds County district attorney, and he prosecuted. He took Brian De La Beckwith to trial twice for the assassination of civil rights leader Medgar Evers. You were probably 8 or 9 years old then. Is that right?
No, I was born in '52, so with the first trial in '64, so I was 12.
12,
so and that's not a lot of difference to make now, but yeah. I do remember that. I sure do.
I mean, that had to be. I mean, considering the environment of the day, I mean, that was a controversial thing for your dad to do. It was the right thing to do, of course, by far the right thing. But I mean, was there pressure on that you felt as during that time that the family felt just about safety and things? I don't know if I've ever heard you talk about that. Maybe you don't want to, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
He really we never felt like we were threatened or people were after us or anything. I will say that I remember there's some places that he would travel to that he would take a pistol with him. And I'm not going to reveal those locations, but as a rule, he was not somebody that was real big on security and fearful. We had no special, we didn't have an alarm system. We didn't have any special lights. There wasn't anything going on. Though I know everyone knows that it was a very controversial time, and there was a lot of people that would have liked to have seen him not pursue that.
And then when he was elected governor, you were in law school, is that right, or in college anyway?
Yeah, I was at Mississippi State, and I was 19 when he was elected in '71. That was exciting. I mean, I had when he was running, I had my own travel schedule and spoke a lot of places and did a lot of things for the campaign, and so that was a very heady time for a 19-year-old for sure.
And and he the person that ran against him in the general election, it was Charles Evers. He was the first black man to run for governor in Mississippi in the not counting back into Reconstruction period. And it was so, it was incredible to think about. Charles Evers was a brother of Medgar Evers, who Governor Waller had tried to prosecute. He did prosecute the person that had assassinated Medgar Evers. So it was just such a unique situation, and best I can tell, I was very young that time, but Governor Waller just ran a straight campaign, didn't make race an issue, and actually had a good relationship with Charles Evers. Is that a fair statement? Or
they were good friends. In fact, I had a I thought I had a good relationship with him. I had every race that I was been involved in over the years. I was gladly, brought in to be a guest on his radio show that he had, and I went to his 90th birthday that he had, and so I think the family's always said that Charles is an interesting study. He at one time even changed to Republican.
Yeah, yes, sir.
And much to the chagrin of some of his friends and supporters, but he's an interesting study. He was I think did a lot of things for Fayette and was a mover and shaker in a lot of ways. Probably decided the Senate election for Senator Cochran. I think he got about 200,000 votes in that. I think he's running as an independent in that one.
Yes, sir.
And I think it was he and Danton and Cochran. And his 200,000 votes put Cochran over and Cochran won with a plurality. And so he has been someone who has definitely influenced the political scene in Mississippi in a lot of ways. But no, I don't think there was ever any animosity. I think Charles Evers was he was trying to find ways to work in the system, and I think he thought he had a shot at it, so he ran. And my dad was always very gracious to people that that ran against him or whatever. With Charles Sullivan, after the election in '71, he appointed him as the Assistant Adjutant General for Air, and he got promoted to Brigadier General in the Air Guard. And Ed Pittman was appointed to represent the Pat Harrison Waterway District. So there's a lot of he never had any in victory. He never had any hard feelings against the people that were running against him.
Yeah, that doesn't always happen today.
No, not today. Not today. Let me do a footnote on that first district. I was using it as an example, but I do think they vote district-wide, but that's not true in other parts of the state.
Yeah, well, I wasn't sure about that. I was just making the point that
I'm not sure about it. I think they vote. I think they vote district-wide, but I know that that's not true in other parts of the state. So, but anyway, so that's just my footnote on that.
So, ending on a personal note, Governor Waller, Ole Miss is having of course, they lost last week, and as we record this, they got a game coming up in a day before we record. We're recording on a Friday, but they're having a big football season. Now you're living in Oxford. You went to Mississippi State. Maybe I guess you went to Ole Miss Law School, so I guess you have allegiances to both schools.
Well, yes. I mean, it's Ole Miss goes back a long way. My grandfather sold vegetables to the cafeteria, and I would ride in the truck with him, bobtail truck, and we would go make a delivery. So I go way back with both of them. But right now our focus is on the grandchildren. So the games we go to see is soccer and things like that with the grandchildren. So we'll let the fans on both sides do well, and I certainly hope all the universities do well in the state in the season that we have right now.
Yeah, you can't beat youth soccer.
If you have a chair, you can't beat it.
Right. Mr. Chief Justice, I'm so appreciative for you doing this. It's always good to catch up with you, and enjoy your grandchildren.
Thank you, Bobby, and I enjoyed the conversation. I hope we didn't lose all the crowd today.
No, sir. I'm sure people were interested in what you had to say. Thank you.
You're welcome.
As we cover the biggest political stories in the state, you don't want to miss an episode of The Other Side. We'll bring you more reporting from every corner of the state, sharing the voices of Mississippians and how they are impacted by the news. So what do we need from you, the listener? We need your feedback and support. If you listen to the podcast on a player like iTunes or Stitcher, please subscribe to the show and leave us a review. We also have an email in which you can share your feedback. That address is podcast@MississippiToday.org. Y'all can also reach out to me or any of my colleagues through social media or email. And as always, thank you for your feedback and support. Subscribe to our weekly podcast on your favorite podcast app or stream episodes online at mississippitoday.org/theotherside. For the Mississippi Today team, I'm Adam Ganeshow. The Other Side is produced by Mississippi Today and engineered by Blue Sky Studios. We hope you'll join us for our next episode.